Hi, I'm Dr. Diane Shannon. So many physicians tell me work is spilling over into my home life. I know I need to set better boundaries, but it just seems impossible. And they share specific effects of this work spillover, like I'm distracted when I'm with my partner, my children, either because I'm multitasking on my computer or I'm just thinking about work. Or I am so exhausted from pajama time working on the EHR. Or I have zero time for exercise, cooking healthy meals, or spending time with friends. And the end result of this is that they feel completely depleted, burned out, isolated, and question whether clinical practice is doable. Setting boundaries is a really important skill to master. It allows us to protect our physical, emotional, and mental needs. Boundaries can be set around time, around space, workload, or even how somebody treats us. Now, the thing is, we don't set boundaries because we're selfish or malicious people. We set them to preserve our limited energy and our sense of self. So if staying fit is a top priority for me, I am not going to be my best self at work or at home if I don't find a way to protect the time and energy I need to exercise. Now, learning to set boundaries is not something that just happens naturally. It takes practice. It is a learned skill, and you can learn it. Now, this is especially true for people who have found it difficult to displease others or are uncomfortable with conflict, because we might anticipate the other person's response and stop right there, accepting the situation without speaking up. Setting boundaries effectively is also challenging for people who have maybe laid down limits aggressively in the past and severed relationships in the process. Here are some practical tips for setting boundaries. First, understand that setting a boundary is at its core making a request of another person. Start by looking for places where you are experiencing negative emotion. So it might be resentment, irritation, maybe a sense of martyrdom. These feelings are signaling that a boundary may be needed. Next, you want to identify your needs. So, what part of you is being stepped on right now? Is it maybe scope creep about a project that you were asked to lead? Is it a lack of clarity about your role at work? So then more and more tasks are landing on you? Is it maybe filling in the gap left by understaffing? Once you figure out what your need is, then you can begin to craft a response, a request for what it is that you need for boundary. Now, to start with, as you're practicing this, try to pick an easier one when you're thinking about making that first request. And what you want to do is consider first what you're going to say to this person who you need to make the request from, and then run it by a trusted friend or colleague. So you might want to have a script ready. Then what you want to do is ask for a meeting with this person so you have dedicated time to ask for this boundary to be set. You don't want to be trying to squeeze this in when either one of you really doesn't have the bandwidth to have a conversation. Before that meeting, consider the aspects of your mindset that might be obstacles or make this request more difficult for you. So, do you tend to be a people pleaser, as many of us are? Do you tend to take situations personally and feel that any no is a direct reflection of your worth or that person's respect for you? It may not be. Do you tend to carry past resentments along with you, right? And if you bring them into that conversation, it's going to make it more difficult. Think then about how you might preempt those tendencies so you can have the most effective conversation as you make this request. Now, when you have that meeting, do your best to leave your hot emotions at the door. So when our toes are stepped on, it is very easy and natural to be angry. But the better conversation will happen if you can leave some of those hot emotions at the door and instead lead with curiosity. So that if you get a no at first, you can ask some questions from a neutral place. Then you can get more information that may set you up for a better yes in the future. If you can't, and just remember, you cannot control the other person's response. That is not in your power. What you can do is act in ways and speak in ways that are more effective and more likely for your request to be honored. If the person either can't or won't consent to the boundary, you'll need to consider your next steps, right? Perhaps you come back with a slightly different ask, or maybe you look for another aspect of your work where you could set a boundary. If this person does agree to the boundary, great. But you need to remember that you may need to remind them or reset it at some point in the future. Try to do that with an approach where you are going in with a matter-of-fact attitude. Again, try to leave those hot emotions at the door. So setting boundaries is a learned skill that can protect more of our time and energy for whatever it is that is most important to us outside of work. Learning to set better boundaries can reduce our risk of burnout and radically change our lives. If you have any questions about setting boundaries at work or home, or just want to run an idea by me, please contact me. I'd love to speak with you. And in the meantime, I wish you all the best in your quest to create a life that really works.